Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking about emotional detachment.
Ooh, interesting.
It's something that a lot of people have heard of,
Right, yeah.
but maybe they haven't totally grasped. So we're going to use as our guide for this deep dive
Okay.
a YouTube video
Right.
by Tam Kaur.
Okay.
She is a self-help influencer,
Mm-hmm.
and the video is called How to Emotionally Detach, with all caps for detach.
Okay.
Master detachment in dating, manifestation, and life.
Wow. Okay, big topic.
Yeah, it is a big topic. So are you ready to unpack this with me?
Absolutely. I think this is a great one to pick because a lot of times detachment gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
It's like you're being told to be cold or uncaring,
Yeah.
but Kaur is presenting this as like a tool for growth
Right.
and actually getting more out of life by doing this.
Yeah, that tension is what I was interested in, too, when I saw this. So right off the bat, Kaur defines detachment as the art of experiencing our feelings without letting them control us. Okay, yeah, I like that. So it's about being in control.
Right. And she contrasts this with, get this, lack and desperation.
Oh.
She even says that those bad vibes can block your manifestations.
Okay, so now, that manifestation connection, it's where things can get a little tricky.
Yeah.
Because there's no scientific proof that, like, your emotions directly make the universe give you stuff.
Right. Yeah.
There's just, like, a psychological angle here. That, I think, is worth considering.
Okay, so, like, if I'm desperate for a promotion,
Mm-hmm.
I might act all weird and insecure in the meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Which would then hurt my
It's
chances.
like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but not in, like, a mystical way. It's
Yeah.
about how our mindset creates behaviors that then lead to certain outcomes.
Right.
So Kaur might not be using clinical terms, but she's tapping into this idea that feeling needy can actually make you act
Yeah.
in ways that push away the thing that you want.
So less about the universe, like,
Yeah.
conspiring against you, and more about you conspiring against yourself.
Yep.
That's a great way to put it. And this actually relates to one of the big ideas in psychotherapy,
Okay.
cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. CBT basically teaches us to identify and challenge these unhelpful thought patterns, the ones that lead to self-sabotaging behaviors.
So it's like Kaur's like the pop culture version of
Yeah.
like some pretty established psychology, which I'm into. So now to actually get into like the how-to of detachment,
Yeah.
she lays out these 6 core principles, which she dramatically calls the laws of detachment.
Ooh, okay. I like the drama.
All right, so let's dive into those laws or principles and see how they hold up.
Yeah, let's see what these laws are.
What is the first principle?
The first principle is about allowing others to be who they are.
Okay.
Now, this sounds simple, but think about it. How often we try to change people,
Oh, yeah.
especially in our close relationships.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that. Like, I try to subtly improve my partner.
We all do it to some extent. But Kaur's point is that this desire to change others often stems from our own insecurities or unmet needs. And it creates this like unhealthy dynamic where we're not really accepting the other person for who they are.
Yeah.
And it can lead to resentment and frustration on both sides.
So how does detachment play into this? Is it just like giving up on people?
Not necessarily giving up, but more about letting go of that need to control.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we can't force someone to be who we want them to be. And she uses a great example in her video about trying to force a connection with someone who's clearly not interested.
Okay. Yeah.
Detachment in this case would be accepting their lack of interest and moving on.
Yeah, holding on to that desire for them to change is just going to create more pain for you.
Right. It's about respecting their autonomy, even if it means letting go of the relationship, choosing your own well-being over trying to force something that's not meant to be.
Okay.
And this applies not just to romantic relationships, but to friendships, family dynamics, even professional collaborations.
That's heavy stuff. But I see how it could apply in so many situations. What's the next law or principle on Kaur's list?
So the second principle is about embracing authenticity.
Okay.
Now, this is where Kaur gets a little self-promotional
Uh-huh.
because she uses her own podcast and jewelry brand as examples.
You're like, be authentic, buy my stuff.
Well, there's a bit of that for sure, but I think there's also a valid point there about aligning your actions with your values.
Okay.
It's about expressing yourself freely and not letting external pressures dictate your choices.
So true detachment is about being true to yourself, even if it means going against the grain.
Exactly. It's about not letting the fear of judgment or rejection hold you back from pursuing your passions and living a life that feels meaningful to you.
Yeah, that resonates with me. It's about defining your own version of success and fulfillment, not letting society's standards dictate your path.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that true happiness comes from living in alignment with your authentic self, not from chasing external validation or trying to fit into a mold that doesn't feel right.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this detachment thing can be pretty empowering. What's the third principle?
The third principle is about not forcing situations.
Okay.
And this ties into her whole emphasis on feeling good, complete, and content on your own.
So it's about cultivating
Yeah.
that inner sense of self-sufficiency
Yeah.
and not needing those external factors to create happiness.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that you already have everything you need within yourself to be happy and fulfilled.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't mean you can't have goals or desires, but it's about approaching them from a place of wholeness rather than lack.
So this ties back to that lack and desperation she was talking about at the beginning. It's
Yeah.
like if you're coming from a place of neediness, you're more likely to push things away.
You got it. It's about shifting your mindset from, I need this to be happy, to I'm already happy and this would be a nice bonus.
A subtle but important distinction. What's the next principle?
The fourth principle is a big one, and it's particularly relevant in our unpredictable world. It's about accepting uncertainty.
Okay.
Kaur argues that we need to make peace with the fact that we can't control everything, even with all the self-help advice out there promising us otherwise.
Yeah, you can't exactly manifest a parking spot.
Yep.
Every time.
Exactly. And it's not just about small inconveniences. Kaur highlights that relationships end, jobs can disappear, plans fall apart. And that's okay.
Okay.
It's about developing a level of comfort with the unknown.
So instead of freaking out, when things don't go according to plan, you just kind of roll with it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that life is full of twists and turns. And that's part of what makes it exciting.
Okay.
And when we resist that, when we try to control everything, we just create more suffering for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm sensing a theme here. A lot of this detachment stuff is about surrendering control, which honestly feels kind of scary.
It can be, but it's also incredibly liberating. Because when you let go of that need to micromanage every aspect of your life, you open yourself up to new possibilities.
Okay.
And you create space for things to unfold in ways you might never have imagined.
That's a nice way to reframe it. What's the next principle?
The fifth principle is one that you'll often hear in self-help circles. Believing that everything happens for a reason.
Okay.
Kaur is very clear on this. Everything happens for a reason, she says in her video. And she connects this to finding meaning, even in challenging experiences.
It's like that saying, when one door closes, another one opens. But sometimes it feels like you're just stuck in a hallway with a lot of closed doors.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's important to acknowledge that this principle can be a bit tricky because sometimes bad things happen and there isn't a clear reason
Right.
or a neatly packaged lesson to be learned.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how do we reconcile this idea of everything happens for a reason with the reality that sometimes life just throws us curveballs?
I think the key here is to focus on our own interpretation.
Okay.
It's not about finding some grand cosmic reason for every event,
Right.
but rather about choosing to look for the potential growth opportunities, even in difficult situations. It's about reframing our perspective from, why is this happening to me, to what can I learn from this, or how can I use this experience to become stronger or more compassionate?
So it's about finding the meaning, even if it's not readily apparent.
Exactly. It's about choosing to see challenges as opportunities for growth, rather than as punishments or failures.
Okay, that's a helpful way to think about it. What's the final principle on Kaur's list?
The sixth principle is, in some ways, the most counterintuitive, especially when we're talking about detachment.
Okay.
It's about embracing the full spectrum of emotions.
Wait, so detachment isn't about becoming some emotionless robot.
Definitely not. It's
Yeah.
about recognizing that all emotions are valid, even the messy, uncomfortable ones. And trying to suppress or deny them actually backfires. It can lead to unhealthy coping mechanisms or emotional outbursts down the road.
Okay.
What's interesting here is how Kaur's message aligns with a core concept in mindfulness,
Okay.
allowing emotions to simply be without judgment or resistance.
So it's not about becoming emotionless, but it's about choosing how we respond to our emotions rather than being ruled by them.
You've nailed it.
Mm.
And this is where the real work of detachment begins. It's about developing that self-awareness to notice your emotions, the emotional intelligence to understand them, and the emotional regulation skills to manage them effectively.
Okay, so we've got these 6 principles of detachment, and I'm starting to see how they connect. Like, it's not just about being aloof, it's about, like, managing your inner world so that you can engage with the outer world in a healthier way.
Yeah, I like that.
But how does Kaur apply all this to, like, specific areas of life, like love and dating, and even manifesting your dreams?
That's where things get really interesting.
I'm ready to go there. Let's see where this deep dive takes us next.
So we've explored Kaur's 6 principles, and I think they've set a good foundation.
Yeah.
But you're right, where the rubber really meets the road is like how this detachment thing plays out in our actual lives, like with dating, where it's almost counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
Like, isn't love about attachment?
That's the big question. I mean, saying, like, detached dating sounds like a recipe for disaster, like swiping left on everyone before you even meet them.
Like emotional numbness, speed dating. But Kaur is like adamant that this isn't about coldness at all.
Okay.
Detachment and love. Her central message is that love without attachment is the purest kind of love.
Okay. That kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, it's a big statement.
How can you love someone deeply and be detached at the same time?
So it comes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Control. Kaur is saying that clinging to someone, needing them to act a certain way to make you happy, that's not really love. It's more about your own, like, insecurity.
Ouch, but I see what she's getting at. It's
Right.
like if my whole sense of worth hinges on whether this person loves me back, that's a lot of pressure for them
Yeah,
and probably not healthy for me.
exactly. Kaur is really big on this idea of accepting the temporary nature of everything. Even love, relationships end. People change. We can't predict the future. Detachment here is about accepting that potential for heartbreak without letting it stop you from loving fully in the present.
So it's kind of like enjoying a beautiful sunset knowing it won't last forever, but appreciating it while it's there.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And she stresses that this actually allows you to love more freely because you're not constantly worried about losing the person. There's a sense of security that comes from knowing your own worth doesn't depend on their presence in your life.
That makes sense, but how do you balance this detachment with actually building a strong connection? It can't just be about keeping one foot out the door all the time.
You're raising a really important point.
Yeah.
And this is where attachment theory comes in. It's a whole field of psychology that looks at the different ways people connect in relationships.
Okay.
Going all the way back to, like, our childhood bonds.
So Psych 101 time. What does attachment stuff have to do with detachment in love?
Well, some people develop secure attachment styles where they're comfortable being close, but also independent. Others have more anxious or avoidant styles, which can make detachment harder. Kaur isn't addressing this directly, but I think understanding your own attachment style can be crucial to applying her principles in a healthy way.
So detachment for, like, a securely attached person might look different than for someone who's super anxious about being abandoned.
Absolutely. For someone with an anxious attachment style, learning detachment isn't about becoming emotionally distant. It's more about working through those insecurities
Okay.
so they can experience closeness without feeling consumed by it.
That's actually really helpful because I think one of the big fears around detachment is that it'll make you cold or shut you off from real intimacy.
And Kaur is very clear that's not what she's talking about. She directly addresses this in her video. She emphasizes that detachment is about processing emotions in a healthy way, not suppressing them.
Okay.
It's about choosing how you respond to your feelings,
Yeah.
rather than letting them control you.
So it's okay to feel jealous or hurt or whatever comes up
Yeah,
in relationships, but it's about not letting those emotions, like, dictate your actions.
exactly. Imagine you're dating someone and they cancel plans last minute. It's perfectly normal to feel disappointed, maybe even a little angry.
Yeah.
But a detached approach would be to communicate your feelings calmly. Maybe set some boundaries for the future, but without blowing things out of proportion.
That's a lot more mature than, like, sending a 10-paragraph text about how they don't care about you.
Right, because that's coming from a place of fear and insecurity, which ultimately pushes people away. Detachment is about communicating your needs and setting boundaries in a way that respects both yourself and the other person.
So it's less about avoiding difficult emotions and more about not letting them hijack the whole relationship.
That's a great way to put it. And this actually applies to every area of life, not just dating.
Yeah.
Think about work. If you get passed over for a promotion, it's natural to be upset.
Yeah.
But a detached response would be to process those feelings, maybe seek feedback, and then refocus on your goals without getting caught up in bitterness or self-pity.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But detachment can't just be some passive thing. Kaur also gives some pretty concrete tips for actually cultivating it.
Yes, and these tips can be incredibly powerful because they address the practical side of things. Kaur suggests starting a new goal or hobby
Okay.
to shift your focus,
Yeah.
which can help redirect energy away from unhealthy attachments.
So instead of obsessing over that ex who ghosted you,
Hmm.
maybe you take up pottery or learn a new language.
Exactly. It's about filling your life with things that bring you joy and fulfillment, things that are independent of any particular person or outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And this also helps build that sense of self-worth
Mm.
that we were talking about earlier, which is crucial for healthy detachment.
So it's like creating your own source of happiness rather than relying on those external factors to provide it.
Absolutely. Another one of Kaur's strategies is journaling, to identify the origins of irrational thoughts. We all have those negative self-talk loops
Yeah, we do.
that fuel our insecurities and attachments. Journaling helps us bring those thoughts to the surface, where we can start to challenge and reframe them.
So instead of just feeling anxious about a first date, you might journal about it and realize that your fear stems from some past experiences that have nothing to do with this new person.
Exactly. It's about becoming aware of the patterns that are driving your emotional reactions, so you can start to make conscious choices instead of just reacting automatically.
Okay, and her final tip is all about boundaries.
Right. Yes, setting limits in areas where you tend to get overly attached. This could be anything from checking your phone less often
Okay.
to saying no to commitments that drain your energy.
Yeah.
It's about protecting your own emotional well-being and creating space for healthy detachment to flourish.
So it's like putting up guardrails on your emotions so they don't run wild and like crash the whole party.
That's a great way to put it. And Queer stresses that these boundaries are not about shutting people out, but about creating a space where you can connect authentically without getting lost in codependency or unhealthy expectations. It's about showing up as your best self in your relationships and in all areas of your life.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, but there's still this big piece of her message we haven't touched on. Manifestation. How does she connect detachment to manifesting your desires?
That's where things get really interesting because she's combining some pretty different philosophies here.
All right, let's dive into the world of manifestation and see how detachment plays a role. All right, so we've talked about detachment in relationships. We've got these practical tips. But now we're getting into the land of manifestation.
Yeah.
And this is where I get a little skeptical, honestly.
It's definitely where things can get a little woo-woo, especially the way some people talk about manifesting. It's like magic or something.
All right.
But Kaur's actually got a pretty interesting take on this,
Yeah, okay.
on how detachment fits in here.
How can you detach from something that you're trying to attract into your life? Like, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose?
It's about how, not the what. Kaur argues that visualizing and setting goals is fine, even encouraged. But the key is letting go of control over exactly how and when those things manifest. Think of it like planting a seed.
Oh,
You nurture it. You give it the right conditions.
yeah.
But you can't force it to grow on your schedule.
So it's more about aligning your actions with your desires, but then trusting that the process will unfold naturally.
Precisely. And this ties back to that whole idea of lack and desperation that Kaur talked about earlier. If you're like desperately clinging to a specific outcome, you might be blocking it with your own anxiety and neediness.
Okay.
Detachment is about having faith in the universe or in your own abilities to deliver what's meant for you without trying to force it.
There's something very Zen about that. It's almost like surrendering to the flow of life rather than trying to like fight against the current.
And that surrender can be incredibly powerful because when you release that need to control everything, you open yourself up to possibilities that you might never have considered before.
Yeah.
It's like you're creating space for the universe to work its magic
Yeah.
or for your own intuition to guide you in the right direction.
I like that. But she doesn't stop at just like manifesting like material things or specific outcomes.
Right.
She also talks about detaching from the past, other people's opinions, and even the need for external validation. That feels like next level detachment to me.
It is. And I think that's where Kaur's message gets really profound because she's essentially saying that true freedom comes from detaching from anything that keeps you stuck in suffering, whether it's past regrets, other people's judgments, or this constant need for approval.
It's like freeing yourself from the mental baggage that's weighing you down.
Exactly. She uses this phrase, freeing your energy, which I admit sounds a bit out there.
Yeah, it does.
But the underlying message is really about taking back your power. It's about recognizing that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, not from those external sources.
That's hard, though, especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about what we should look like, what we should achieve, who we should be. It's like everyone's got an opinion.
It's incredibly challenging. And Kaur doesn't offer any easy solutions. But her emphasis on self-awareness is key here. It's about becoming aware of those voices, those external pressures, and then consciously choosing which ones to listen to and which ones to let go of.
It's like filtering the noise.
Yeah.
And like tuning into your own inner compass rather than letting everyone else steer your ship.
That's a great metaphor. And she also talks about the power of living in the present moment. This is a core principle of mindfulness. And it's incredibly liberating because when you're fully present, you're not dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. You're simply experiencing life as it unfolds with all its beauty and its challenges.
It's like you're creating space for joy and gratitude rather than getting lost in those anxieties of what might be or what could have been.
Exactly. And Kaur believes that this present moment awareness is essential for detaching from those things that keep us stuck in suffering. Whether it's replaying past mistakes, obsessing over other people's judgments, or constantly seeking validation from outside sources.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We went from the basic definition of detachment to these really profound ideas about freedom and fulfillment. What are some of the key takeaways that you want our listeners to walk away with? Like the things that they should really be chewing on after this deep dive?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to remember that detachment is not about becoming cold or emotionless. It's not about shutting people out or suppressing your feelings.
Right.
It's about finding that balance between experiencing your emotions fully without letting them control you and creating healthy boundaries that allow for both personal growth and fulfilling connections. It's about choosing how you respond to the world rather than just reacting on autopilot.
And it's about recognizing that true happiness comes from within, not from chasing external validation or clinging to things that are outside of your control.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating that inner sense of peace and self-acceptance that allows you to navigate life's ups and downs with more resilience and grace.
I like that. So, as we're wrapping up this deep dive into Tam Kaur's take on emotional detachment, what's like one question or challenge that you'd like to leave our listeners with, something to really spark their reflection?
Here's something to ponder. If you were to fully embrace the principles of detachment, that resonated with you today, what would change in your life? How would your relationships, your pursuit of your goals, and even your sense of self be transformed?
That is a powerful question to sit with. I think the beauty of exploring a concept like emotional detachment is that it invites us to really examine our own patterns, beliefs, and behaviors, and to make conscious choices about how we want to show up in the world.
It's a journey of self-discovery and a path to greater freedom and fulfillment.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep growing.
And remember, the power to create a more fulfilling life lies within you.